This week we are going to be working in Luke chapter 7. So I want to make a few comments to you about what you're going to be seeing as you read through this chapter. I think, Jeff, it's easy to sort of break this chapter into three big pieces.
Right.
And that might help you structure the chapter a little bit and digest the content a little bit better. So think about the first 17 verses as being one segment with two miracles.
Right.
We start with the healing of the centurion's servant, and then absolutely one of my favorite miracles when he raises the widow's son as the funeral's going out to the cemetery.
Absolutely.
What a really cool moment. So we have these two miracles, but we don't want to get lost in the miracles, right? Because there's something deeper than just, hey, these amazing things take place. You have this remarkable example of faith from the centurion, I think. Here.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, the centurion, when you stop and think about it, David, he is not Jewish. And to go one step further and worse, he is part of the Roman occupiers and oppressors.
Right.
He's from the Jewish standpoint, he would be a wicked man. And yet Jesus, is shocked by the faith he shows, where he speaks about just understanding authority, and all Jesus has to do is speak the word, doesn't even need to come to his own house to heal him. If Jesus just speaks the word, that would be enough. And so Jesus is remarking about, not in Israel has he found that kind of faith, which I think helps to set up that other miracle where Jesus heals the widow's son. It's got echoes of what Elijah did for the widow of Zarephath when he raised her son. And I think the Jews did catch up on that when they say a great prophet has risen among us. Mm-hmm. They realize they haven't seen miracles like this since the days of Elijah and Elisha. And what that miracle does as well is it shows that just like, as the New Testament points out elsewhere, just like in the days of Elisha, faith was really found, outside Israel, up in Tyre and Sidon, and some of the northern ranges where Elijah ran to, and Elisha for that matter as well. It's the outsiders who are getting it, the insiders are not. And so the Jews are going through another days of Elijah phase in which a great prophet, great miracles are worked, and yet Israel is not going to repent and get it.
Which then becomes a contrast as we go on through the chapter, because we have two other segments and two other characters that you would think would get it.
Yeah.
And yet this next segment, beginning at verse 18 and going down to verse 35, so think of that as a second segment, Luke 7, 18 to 35, we have John the Baptist, who in 19 asked this really odd question after what he had he heard the voice from heaven, come on.
Right.
And now he's saying, are you the expected one? And so John, who you would think would also have great faith, seems to have faith that's shaken here or faltering a bit.
Well, I think like all of us, you in one sense hear the words in the great vision. Luke chapter 4, Jesus goes into the Nazareth synagogue and preaches Isaiah 61. I've come to proclaim release to the captives. And where's John when he's wondering? He's sitting in prison saying, release to the captives is not working out for me. This does not make a lot of sense. And so, yes, that's one of those, Jesus came to accomplish a spiritual revolution, not an earthly one. And so John is struggling like all other human beings, even though John is an Elijah himself. John is struggling to make that jump from, solving this age's problems to solving the sin problem so that we can live in the age to come. And so John is beginning to wonder exactly what is this messianic work. And because if you don't understand what the Messiah is going to do, you're not going to recognize who the Messiah is.
Yeah, and it just points up that we go through seasons, right?
Absolutely.
And John has a season where he has seen things, his faith are strong, and he's going through a tough season where maybe his faith is shaken. And the Lord helps him with that. The Lord gives him evidence to affirm that. I also thought 29 and 30 are particularly important verses because, again, all the people acknowledge God's justice, having been baptized by John. But the Pharisees and lawyers, the religious leaders who you would think would be all in and seeing this, well, they rejected God's purpose for themselves. So really all throughout this context, we have sort of the unexpected being drawn to Jesus.
Right.
And those you would think would have been drawn to him, they don't have faith.
Ironically, yeah.
And so the last segment is verse 36 through verse 50, through the end of the chapter. And that's this encounter in the home of the Pharisee. Again, a religious leader
Right.
that you would think would, because of his knowledge, know who Jesus was, and yet clearly he is not believing in Jesus. In fact, he seems to be looking for some ground for criticism. And the great thing is you have this woman who comes on the scene, and she's washing Jesus' feet, and she becomes the contrast. She evidently has a bit of a scandalous background,
Right.
and yet here she is. She understands Jesus, and he commends her faith by the time we get to the end.
Right. And Jesus, it's here that Jesus utters that devastating line for the one who has been forgiven little, loves little. And so, it's one of those, unless you see your own spiritual issues and your own need for forgiveness, you're not going to love Jesus. You're not going to see him for who he is or realize the enormity of what he has done for you, which is, we don't think about this, but that's a lack of faith. Part of faith is not just seeing who Jesus is. Part of faith is truly seeing who I am. And the Pharisee does not see that before God. He and that scandalous woman really aren't that far away because both need forgiveness. And if he realized how much he had been forgiven in his own way for his own life's issues, maybe he would have been able to love Jesus more as well. And so still a faith issue.
And so maybe that becomes a great point of application to ponder as you look at this text. Maybe a couple of points of application. One, to judge our own faith and to see if we have the faith that this unexpected crowd has. Right. Or maybe a faltering faith, or maybe no faith. Each of the three segments give us an opportunity to look at our own faith, and then to ponder the unexpected and to think about our evangelistic work.
Right.
Sometimes I think we write off the people like the centurion or the woman, and we look for more fertile fields, when in reality, the most fertile fields may be the people we are most quick to write off. So some thoughts of application as you spend your week reading through Luke chapter 7. Hope that'll be a blessing to you.